All right, we're turning the page early because this matchup deserves that we turn the page early. It's 49ers and the Chiefs. And guess what? The 49ers are actually favorites in this game against the undefeated Chiefs. 1 to 1.5 point favorites is what I've seen. Many people still aren't talking about that because there's a lot of other NFL games to be played before the Super Bowl rematch is on the front burner. But the 49ers have played their final game before this matchup, and so have the Chiefs. Kansas City has a bye this weekend. The 49ers had the mini bye following their win at Seattle. So it is officially time to break down one of the most anticipated matchups of the NFL 2024 regular season. And as you saw in the title, at least on YouTube, I know some of you are watching on Twitter, Brock Purdy has been better than Patrick Mahomes by a wide margin statistically so far this year. So the 49ers have had a definite advantage at the most important position, which is a big part of the reason why they are actually favored in this football game. And if you have Brock Purdy on your team playing the way that he's playing now, you've got to feel good about a matchup against anybody. And I think that's what the 49ers are thinking. They think that the rest of the team can figure out some of its issues. We already saw a lot of progress in that regard against Seattle around the fulcrum that is Brock Purdy. He is a stabilizing agent for the 49ers with how well he has been playing. But I've got a lot to talk about as far as this matchup goes. I'm calling it the measuring stick bowl for the 49ers. Back in 1994, they had lost 2 consecutive NFC championship games to the Dallas Cowboys. So that was an existential crisis for the 49ers. Carmen Policy, who was running all the personnel stuff on the 49ers side at the time, got into an elevator with the owner at the time, Eddie DeBartolo Jr. This was after the 49ers lost to the Dallas Cowboys for the second straight time in the NFC Championship game. And Eddie DeBartolo Jr. said, do whatever you need to do. We need to get over the hump next season. Blank check, figure it out. We need to beat the Dallas Cowboys in the 1994 season. Carmen Policy was quoted as saying, if we lose to Dallas, we die. I see a lot of parallels between that 1994 49ers situation and the current one. This current 49ers team has lost to Kansas City twice in the Super Bowl. It hasn't been in consecutive years, but it's been in a fairly condensed window of time. So this very similar core of star players and obviously the head coaching staff and top executives are still around. It was to end the 2019 season in Super Bowl 54 and then to end the 2023 season in Super Bowl 58. The 49ers, as they are constructed right now, seem to have one truly legitimate extra chance, extra bite out of the apple to beat Kansas City. It's not saying that the chances are going to end after this season, but they may look different after this season, given the fact that Brock Purdy is eligible for a contract extension. Now, I differ in opinion, and I study this really closely as to exactly how different things will look for the 49ers, because I do think that they're managing the salary cap really well. But it is fair to say that the current roster that you have in the NFL is very ephemeral. It's already changed so much even from last year for the 49ers. So they had a special collection of players, like truly special in 2022 and 2023. In 22, it was derailed by the Brock Purdy elbow injury against Philadelphia. In 2023, the 49ers lost in overtime to the Chiefs. The reason I feel that this is very similar to the Cowboys 49ers situation of the mid 1990s is because there was deadline pressure ticking for the 49ers in 1994. And I feel deadline pressure for the 49ers ticking here in 2024, exactly 30 years later. Now, we all know how 1994 ended up. The 49ers were able to get over the hump. They made a couple moves in the offseason to surpass Dallas. They did surpass Dallas. They won their most recent Super Bowl. But if we delve deeper into the details of that story, the 49ers played the Cowboys before the rematch, the ultimate grudge match, the number 3 repeat of the NFC Championship game. They faced the Cowboys at Candlestick Park in the regular season. It came around week 10. I think it might have been week 11. And the 49ers put added importance on that regular season game. They weren't shy about it at the time either. They had been beaten by Dallas multiple times in a row. They needed to prove to themselves that they could get over the hump and beat Dallas so that when they inevitably met in the postseason, they would have that confidence that was necessary to finally kick the door down and get the job done. There's no guarantee that the Chiefs will come out of the AFC bracket, and there's obviously no guarantee that the 49ers will come out of the NFC bracket. But if history has taught us anything, and 2019 was Exhibit A and 2023 was Exhibit B, there is a solid chance that the Chiefs will be AFC champions, and there is a solid chance that the 49ers will be NFC champions. So this is a possible Super Bowl preview. And if this goes the way that I think it has a chance of going, the 49ers do have a golden opportunity to give themselves some swagger, buy themselves some confidence in this game against the Chiefs. That's why I call it the measuring stick bowl. We can see where the 49ers are at this point. It's going to be October 20th when they play the Chiefs. It's still several months away from a potential Super Bowl rematch, but we will be able to see how far the 49ers do need to go. As of right now, to set the stage for this matchup where the 49ers are favored by about a point, this is what the setup looks like. This is obviously the efficiency chart, team tiers. We go over this kind of stuff a lot. X-axis is offense. Y-axis is defense. So further to the right means better offense. 49ers, after putting up 36 on the Seattle Seahawks Thursday Night Football, find themselves behind only Washington, off the charts offensively, Baltimore, Cincinnati, and Buffalo. So number 5 by offensive EPA for the 49ers, well above average. Defensively, the 49ers are relatively middle of the pack, although it looks like they're a bit above league average. I made the point yesterday. I thought that was a big time performance defensively for the 49ers against the Seahawks. They had played in triple digit weather on Sunday, so they had just over 3 days of rest. They were on the field for 78 snaps against the Seattle Seahawks. They were missing key players at every level of their defense, from Javon Hargrave and Jordan Elliott on the defensive line to obviously Dre Greenlaw at linebacker and one of his backups, Demetrius Flanagan-Foles, to Charvarius Ward and Talanoa Hufanga in the secondary. And the 49ers still held very, very strong defensively. Those Thursday night games can be an absolute mess, and the 49ers made sure that it wasn't on defense. And I think that we talk about some of the struggles that they've had, but if we do that, we have to talk about some of the successes. And so far, the successes are actually starting to outweigh the struggles. This is where the 49ers are defensively, just above that average line that's crossing this graph horizontally. Kansas City, meanwhile, has been worse offensively than San Francisco. As you can see, the Kansas City logo is further to the left, but they've been a little bit better defensively. A lot of people look at this and they're surprised. Well, whoa, I thought Kansas City at 5-0 would be somewhere out here, but they aren't. The Chiefs haven't really blown anybody out of the water this season. In fact, they've even won one game against the Chargers 17-10. And the Chargers are a team that would lose 17-10. Good defense, but the offense is on the wrong side of the dividing y-axis. Kansas City most recently beat the New Orleans Saints 26-13. That was at home at Arrowhead. You could see the Saints through this early portion of the season have a profile that's relatively similar to the 49ers. But there's still considerable movement happening on this chart. So this is just to give you a quick cursory look at where the 49ers and the Chiefs are. Here are a few notes to preview this game. The Chiefs' run defense has improved immensely from 2023. That was one thing that we looked at entering the Super Bowl, and we said, well, boy, the Chiefs number 28 EPA against the run, that could be really, really problematic against the 49ers in the Super Bowl. They've improved from number 28 to number 8. The Chiefs have bottled up some really, really good running backs this season. Derrick Henry of the Baltimore Ravens, 13 carries, 46 yards. Zach Moss, 12 carries, 34 yards. Bijan Robinson, 16 carries, 31 yards against Kansas City. J.K. Dobbins, 14 carries, 32 yards. And Alvin Kamara, 11 carries, 26 yards. So Kansas City is playing really, really good run defense. And I'll tell you what, it's going to be hard for the 49ers to replicate this. I don't think they're going to be replicating this. This is the 49ers efficiency chart from the game against Seattle. And the Seahawks have been beaten up defensively, but they've also struggled whenever they face good quarterbacks. Obviously, Brock Purdy falls into that category. San Francisco had actually not run the ball all too efficiently leading up into the game on Thursday night, but everything was efficient here. Anytime I used stuff from Ben Baldwin's site, then green and darker green means more efficient. Purple and darker purple means less efficient. So the 49ers had an awesome efficiency profile against the Seattle Seahawks. I don't think that it's going to be possible to do that against the Kansas City Chiefs. From number 28 to number 8, one of the anchors of everything that the Chiefs do, maybe the anchor of everything that the Chiefs do defensively, is Chris Jones, the defensive tackle. He's going to line up all across that defensive front. These are ESPN's rankings of pass rush win rate. Chris Jones, number 2 in the league. As you could see, the pass rush win rate is 20%, which is really good. 20 to 21% typically ends up leading the league. Right now, Zach Allen of the Broncos is way up top at 26%. But look at Malik Collins. How about the 49ers' own Malik Collins they picked up in that trade with Houston? He has, I think, quietly been having a very solid year. I would even venture to say, that's a 19% pass rush win rate. It's 1 point behind Chris Jones. He's got the same amount of pass rush wins as Chris Jones. So you've got 12 and 60, 12 and 63 for Malik Collins. So just a percentage point behind. At this point, I would even venture to say that Malik Collins has been an upgrade over Eric Armstead. We didn't see Armstead, even with a good pass rushing year last year, rank that high. And Collins has been playing the run really well. One thing, we talk about the Chiefs run defense being really good, and obviously that's going to be important to stop the 49ers from doing what they did to the Seahawks, 228 yards, most 49ers rushing yardage since 2019 against Seattle. The 49ers had 228 on Thursday, they had 232 back in 2019 against Carolina in a blowout win. So the Chiefs run defense will be put to the test. The 49ers rushing offense will be put to the test. I'm very curious, though, about the inverse in this game, the 49ers run defense, because I think, and a lot of people are going to be up in arms when they see what I just put up on the screen. I say 2 good offensive lines. People will be like, wait, the 49ers offensive line isn't good. It's putting up some surprising results this year, and I'll get into that in a bit. But the Chiefs have the class of the league up front. They're number 1 in pass block win rate. They're number 2 in run block win rate, which makes it surprising that Mahomes, I get it, even though some receivers have been hurt, makes it surprising that Patrick Mahomes has languished statistically this year. But the 49ers run defense is something that will truly be put to the test next week when these two teams square off. I think that the run defense for San Francisco has shown real signs of being an improved unit this year. They were obviously bad last year, number 26 in run defense EPA. And a lot of people have gotten lost in the noise of, some of these ugly losses, and they think that the defense has just fallen off the rails. Well, first of all, they were really good against Seattle. I just explained how overall that was That was a big time defensive performance. Second of all, they only gave up 2.6 yards per carry against the Seahawks. So for a run defense that's coming off a bad year, that was a good performance on the road. Last week against Arizona, or the prior week before, I guess last Sunday. So it's still Thursday games are crazy. We're less than a week removed from the 49ers game against the Cardinals. But against Arizona, for over a half, the 49ers only allowed 2.6 per carry. It wasn't until the triple digit weather wore them down that those stats became a little bit more inflated. And the week before that, the 49ers held the Patriots to around 3 yards per carry. So for 3 straight weeks, and they never had a 3-week stretch in 2023 like this, for 3 straight weeks, the 49ers run defense has looked like its old rigid self under normal circumstances. And no, I don't consider the 100 plus degrees on the field against Arizona to be normal circumstances, plus the 49ers offense turning the ball over 4 times and overexposing the defense. That said, people on the outside aren't going to look at the 49ers run defense as an improved unit until they actually string together the results clearly on a game by game basis and they're paired with wins. And this test against the Chiefs gives San Francisco a really, really good opportunity to prove what they need to do. But the Chiefs' offensive line across the board, and they've got, by the way, they've got Kareem Hunt running for them now. Injuries have forced Kansas City to dig deep into skill position weapons that weren't necessarily even on the team when this season began. But Wanye Morris is the left tackle. Joe Thuney is the left guard. He's one of the best guards in the game. Creed Humphrey, really good young center for Kansas City. Trey Smith is the right guard, and Jawan Taylor is the right tackle. Kansas City has invested a lot in this offensive line. Obviously, it's paid off when you see the 2 metrics down there on the screen. Number 1 in pass block win rate and number 2 in run block win rate. And the 49ers are going to have their hands full up front. I went through this on the San Francisco Standard yesterday when we talked about grades. Let's go get the 49ers grades open from the game against the Kansas City Chiefs, against the Seattle Seahawks, because I led with Nick Bosa. And the reason that I led with Nick Bosa is because he had the 14 pressures against Seattle, which was the most of any player besides himself in the past 4 years. Bosa had a hell of a game. You could see here, and he and Leonard Floyd completely constricted the pocket, as you can see here. This is a fascinating graphic because it shows you the average distance away from the quarterback across the entire game, this bold line that I'm tracing. And then this is where Bosa and Floyd were, like significantly closer to the quarterback on average than the average edge rusher. But Seattle had the number 30 ranked offensive line. So the 49ers are going from facing a bottom feeder as far as blocking up front to facing one of the top dogs, if not the top dog. The Chiefs are 1 in pass block win rate, 2 in run block win rate. So this is going to be a massive, massive test for the 49ers. I'll get into the 49ers offensive line performance in a second, but to bridge this gap right now between the Kansas City side and the 49ers side, here, the Purdy Mahomes thing is so fascinating to me. Mahomes has been relatively average statistically. I have some of the graphics ready for you to show you how the quarterback position has shaken out so far this year. But another XY chart. So Purdy is up here, upper right. He was in the Jaden Daniels spot last year. I think he'll probably work toward there. I would expect some regression from Daniels, but quietly, Joe Burrow has been putting up a really good year. I think he's surprised people in that he started off so poorly, but Joe Burrow has really found his stride, and Cincinnati is playing some good football. Derek Carr got off to the really hot start. I think that he'll continue to slide. I mean, Carr was off the charts after the first 2 weeks with Clint Kubiak, but it was tough sledding for Derek Carr against Steve Spagnuolo and the Kansas City Chiefs defense on Monday night. Anyway, Purdy, where you want to be. I think he's probably only going to get better based on what we've seen. Mahomes is also, top right. He's following the regression line here, and he is in a cluster. We've gotten so used to Patrick Mahomes being out here in space on a chart like this that it is relatively surprising to see him in a cluster. And this chart, I think, even makes Patrick Mahomes' numbers look a little bit more favorable than they actually are. We can go to Pro Football Reference. I sorted it by adjusted net yards per attempt. So let me trying to highlight Brock Purdy. Well, normally it lets you select an entire row. It's not letting me do it. There's Brock Purdy, 8 adjusted net yards per attempt, ranked second in the league behind only Lamar Jackson. Look at Patrick Mahomes, 19th in adjusted net yards per attempt, from eight flat for Brock Purdy to 6.1 for Patrick Mahomes. In every single metric, if you go to PFF and you go to big time throw percentage or turnover worthy plays or just simple yards per attempt, Brock Purdy has had a significant edge over Patrick Mahomes. Now, the Chiefs are missing a lot of important weapons, but so are the 49ers. Obviously, there has been no Christian McCaffrey. There probably will be no Christian McCaffrey for this football game for San Francisco. We'll wait on the statuses of somebody like Jordan Mason for the 49ers, but I mean, these are different offenses as far as weaponry is concerned because of some of the key absences. Rashee Rice for the Kansas City Chiefs, so different offenses than we saw in the Super Bowl, but also there's been markedly variant quarterback play between Brock Purdy and Patrick Mahomes to open this season. All right, so I mentioned two good offensive lines. The 49ers, believe it or not, rank number 3 this year in ESPN's pass block win rate. That measures how often an offensive line holds its blocks for 2.5 seconds or more. If you hold your block on pass blocking for 2.5 seconds, it's registered as a win. And then they can measure that cumulatively around the whole offensive line. As I mentioned, the Chiefs are number 1. The 49ers are number 3. The Bills are number 2. The crazy inverse that we've seen is that the 49ers in run block win rate, where the Chiefs rank number 2, now rank number 30. So the 49ers are near the very bottom of the league in run blocking, but they're near the very top of the league in pass blocking. I know it's something that I talked about over the course of the offseason when, for example, they drafted Dominic Puni, who was a better pass blocker than a run blocker. It seemed to me that the 49ers were really focusing on shifting their philosophy to fit Brock Purdy. I think that's happening. That exactly is happening. They're throwing the ball more. They were already doing that during the last postseason run. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and they're going to ride that hot hand, and they hope that that hot hand is playing at this level for their team for a long time. So they want to adapt the infrastructure in front of Purdy. But this shift is fascinating because it's happening within the context of the 49ers long range rivalry with the Chiefs. They've already played the Chiefs twice in the Super Bowl. This is the measuring stick bowl. They're facing the Chiefs again this week in a week 7 matchup to really set the parameters for what might come moving forward. And the 49ers have markedly changed as a team, even from the last meeting, definitely from the Super Bowl 54 meeting and from the 2022 regular season meeting. The 49ers have a new quarterback after 2022 because Brock Purdy wasn't like, I think Purdy saw his first career action as in garbage time actually against the Chiefs in 2022. But they've got the new quarterback, but now the infrastructure is definitely trending more toward pass blocking. Dominic Puni's been excellent there. I think even Colton McKivitz has improved this season. He only gave up 1 pressure against Seattle. Trent Williams has been a top 5 pass protector on the left side. They need a little bit more out of Banks and Brendel. I thought those were the 2 worst pass protectors against the Seattle Seahawks. And Chris Jones is probably going to try to line up over those positions to strain them as much as possible. But what an opportunity for the 49ers facing one of the best defensive tackles in the game who lines up all over the place. They can really prove their mettle and prove that there's been some improvement along the front. On top of the fact that the 49ers have played, I think, decently well on the offensive line as far as pass protection goes, and I think it's improved over the course of the season. Brock Purdy's got tremendous escapability. So they didn't see a single sack against the Seattle Seahawks, even though there was some pressure in that game. And it's because Purdy just is elite in as far as how he can move away from the pass rush. And that has been a huge, huge component of his game ever since he arrived in 2022. But I think especially this year, he's taken that up to another level. So I have a few questions about this game. These are my introductory questions for 49ers Chiefs, which is still over a week away. But I think the game is going to come down to these three things. So you should frame everything that you read this week, that you watch this week, as you get ready for 49ers Chiefs through this lens. Can the 49ers rush efficiently against Kansas City? Again, the Chiefs have improved from number 28 to number 8 in run defense. We know that Steve Spagnuolo is a really good defensive coordinator. I think that he made it an emphasis this offseason to make sure that Kansas City was better in this regard, because that was one of the weaknesses for the Chiefs last year. So if the Chiefs can stop the 49ers run game and prevent rushing efficiency, and guess what? The 49ers haven't been all too efficient running the ball yet this year. I think that the game against the Seattle Seahawks was the outlier so far. The 49ers came into that game ranking number 20 in rushing efficiency by EPA. The Chiefs can stop the 49ers in that regard. The Spagnuolo can start having his way against Brock Purdy. He could really start being aggressive with some of the coverage concepts that he runs on the back end. He could drop extra defenders into coverage, simulated blitzes, what have you. Bro, we could see Steve Spagnuolo try to apply a lot of what he did in the Super Bowl to this game plan, and the 49ers want to get the Chiefs out of that comfort zone. So the bedrock of running the football is so important in this football game. 2, how limited will Patrick Mahomes' production be versus San Francisco? Again, Mahomes is number 19 in adjusted net yards per attempt. He's number 17 in QBR. Brock Purdy's been a top 3, top 5 guy efficiency-wise this year. Patrick Mahomes has been middle of the pack so far this year. If anything, the defense is carrying Patrick Mahomes. The Chiefs are playing top-tier defense, maybe second-tier defense, we'll say that, but it's been better than the Kansas City offense, which has been missing weapons. And even though Kansas City's got a really good offensive line, they have not been producing at the prolific levels that I think some people have come to expect of them. So what can we expect with Patrick Mahomes against this 49ers defense? Is he suddenly going to turn it up and just completely scorch the 49ers? Or is this going to be a game where San Francisco can keep the Chiefs near that 20-point mark and give themselves a really good chance to win? The Kansas City scoring outputs this year have not been prolific. They beat the Ravens 27-20 to open the season. So 27, that's a solid amount. But they haven't reached that total since. 26 against the Bengals in a 26-25 win. 22 against the Falcons in a 22-17 win. 17 against the Chargers in a 17-10 win. And 26 against the Saints in a 26-13 win. So let's go back to the team tier chart. And let's see how many they scored against each defense. Remember, the defense is measured by the spot on the y-axis. So the Ravens, okay, that's a below average defense. They scored 27 against the Ravens. The Bengals, okay, that's another below average defense. They scored 26 against the Bengals. The Falcons, okay, that's a below average defense. They scored 22 against the Falcons. The Chargers, okay, that's the first above average defense that the Chiefs have played. They only scored 17 against the Chargers. All right, the Saints, that's the second above average defense that the Chiefs have played. They scored 26. So when you look at defensive quality versus production for Kansas City, the Saints game, their most recent one, has been their most impressive one, which could lead people to believe that the Chiefs are finding their stride offensively, that Patrick Mahomes and company is starting to turn it on. They got some decent rushing from Kareem Hunt. Travis Kelce might be playing his way into a little bit better shape. I think for many reasons. This is also a proving grounds game for the Kansas City Chiefs because there has been talk about the fact that they're 5-0, but without overpowering performances. The best one coming against New Orleans on Monday Night Football. So they're going to have a chance against an improving 49ers defense coming off a bye. And we know that Andy Reid has been really, really good in his career coming off buys. They're going to have a chance to show a little bit of something against the 49ers. And the 49ers are going to have a chance in the Measuring Stick Bowl to show a little something against Patrick Mahomes. But that's my question number 2. Where is Mahomes and company? Where's their production going to be against the 49ers? And then number 3, how will Shanahan and Brock Purdy respond to the Steve Spagnuolo challenge? Great defensive coordinator for Kansas City. Has beaten the 49ers twice in the Super Bowl now. Created a lot of confusion last year. There was a lot of pressure that came on blitzes last season that the 49ers really, really struggled to pick up and deal with. Spagnuolo was aggressive. It worked against San Francisco, got them out of sorts up front. Remember when Spencer Burford forgot to block Chris Jones? You got to give Kansas City some credit for how they were able to get a juggernaut of the 49ers offense out of whack last year. So this is not the be-all, end-all matchup. This is a regular season game, not a postseason game. But I think it would go a long way for the 49ers' confidence to show some real success against Steve Spagnuolo and company. In question 2, when I asked what will Mahomes' production be, and we looked at how the Chiefs have been against some of these teams, well, where will the 49ers offense be as far as points scored? They just put up 36 on the Seattle Seahawks, who are a mediocre defense, I would say, at this point, maybe bad. The Seahawks started off hot, but that was against bad quarterbacks. So it's hard to get a gauge on what's going on there. But we do know that the Jets defense, for example, I could put this back up on the screen. The Jets have a good defense, and the 49ers dropped 30 on them. 49ers dropped 36 on the Seattle Seahawks. They put up, and this was one of their worst games. I would say this is, the Rams and the Cardinals games, not good because what did they do? 27 against the Rams, but it's a bottom barrel defense. Should have been more than 30. The Cardinals on a hot day should have been more than 30, but they didn't get that job done. The Patriots, that was a good game for San Francisco, but those are all bottom half defenses. The top half defenses that the 49ers have played, the Jets and the Vikings, it was 30 against the Jets, and what was it? Somewhere in the 20s against the Minnesota Vikings. The Chiefs are also a top half defense. Spagnuolo's given them trouble before. I could see why the prognosticators and the betting line has this game as a really, really tight affair, because the data shows us that both teams are likely to be in the mid-20s, somewhere in the mid-20s in this game, and the 49ers are favored by 1 or 1.5 points. So fascinating stuff. I'm going to answer a few questions, and then I'll send everybody off to have a good Saturday and a good weekend. But I figured that now was the best time to give you the first preview of 49ers Chiefs. If you want to ask me about any matchups, feel free to ask me about those. If you want to ask about injuries and updates on that front, feel free to ask about those. If you have questions about the Seattle performance, which was just a couple nights ago, feel free to ask about that. I normally don't move to previewing a game this soon in the week, but this is the matchup that a lot of people had circled on their calendar for psychological reasons. They wanted to see if the 49ers could finally get past that Kansas City hump, and they will have that opportunity at Levi's Stadium on October 20th. What is the update on Mustafa? Low ankle sprain, day to day. 49ers got good news on all their injuries. Matthew Wright, no fracture in the shoulder, although he did briefly dislocated, but he should be ready to go for the Chiefs. There was one more day-to-day condition coming out of the game. Jordan Mason with the AC joint sprain in his shoulder. Any concerns with Sorensen versus Reed? I think there's a concern for any defensive coordinator facing Andy Reid. Andy Reid is one of the great play calling minds of all time. But Nick Sorensen's defense, don't sleep on it. I mean, that was a hell of a performance against Seattle. I think they were in line for a solid performance against the Arizona Cardinals, but they played them on a triple digit day, which is going to be tough for anybody. And the offense for the 49ers didn't help out the defense. They were good against the Patriots. I really think that it's been three fundamentally sound weeks in a row for San Francisco's defense following the disaster class against the Rams. I do not look at that Arizona game as something that we should look at as a broadly indicative marker of defensive quality. That was not football weather. The Cardinals struggled in it too, but it was the 49ers who coughed up the football. So we have to look at this in the big picture. And I do think that the 49ers defense has a wonderful opportunity this week coming off a good game against the Seattle Seahawks. Why was Sorensen dropping DTs into coverage late in the game? Well, he dropped Kalia Davis into coverage, and Kalia Davis, he made a play. That was a positive play for the 49ers. Remember, Kalia Davis is a unique talent in that he was a stack inside linebacker when he started his college career at Central Florida. And did you guys see the tackle that he made? I mean, he looked out of place in space because he's bigger than he was when he was a linebacker, but he could still move. I would like to see the 49ers run that more. Are you kidding? If you've got a defensive tackle that can move like that, why not try it out? There was only one cover play for Kalia Davis, and the one cover play ended up working out well. The reason you run plays like that, where you'll drop defensive linemen, you don't do them a lot, but you surprise the offensive line because you'll typically send a linebacker or somebody else rushing the quarterback on a blitz, and you call it a zone blitz. It's a zone drop, and you would hope that you design it schematically so that there's confusion about who the offense needs to block. But the danger obviously is exposing one of those defensive linemen in coverage if the blitz is picked up. But I think that with Kalia Davis, you can start playing around with some things because he does have that linebacker's background, and he did look good on that one play. Jacob asks, will the 49ers use Ricky Pearsall in the red zone? I would hope so. He's a good separator. I think that he could be somebody that helps the 49ers generate a little bit more space in the red zone, although I'm not sure he's going to play right away. They will activate Ricky Pearsall's practice window, but they will not activate him for the game unless he shows tremendous progress early this season. Early this week, I would say. We got a Chiefs fan in here. Hope that my assessment of your Chiefs has been up to your liking. I think Kansas City, again, playing really good run defense. Mahomes and the offense have not been nearly as good, but the Chiefs' offensive line, anytime a team brings this kind of performance up front into a game, they're ranking 1 and 2 in pass block and run block win rate, and we know the Chiefs have dudes up front. You have a chance to win. Like it's a really, really stable setup and formula that the Chiefs have. And we know Mahomes is a great. We just know that he's not playing great so far this year. But at any point behind an offensive line like that, he can definitely turn it on. Make sure you check out the grades for the 49ers Seahawks game in the standard. I'm going to send this to Mike to put into the description because these here, let's get it up on the screen. This is so important. I focus on Bosa on the defensive line. I have a couple graphics in there on Bosa on the defensive line. This is leading up into their biggest test of the year, of the regular season at least. We saw how well the 49ers played against Seattle, how they constricted the pocket, how they held the Seahawks to 2.6 yards per carry. But again, that was a Seattle line that ranked number 30 in both of the metrics that I've put down on the screen. Number 30 is not number 1 and number 2. So the challenge increases exponentially this year for the 49ers, this week for the 49ers. It goes from the bottom of the league in competition to the top of the league in competition with Kansas City. And that's just the way that you want to build things up. Because, in the big picture, we know that the 49ers are extremely talented. We know that they're Super Bowl contenders, but we also know that they've been playing some flawed football earlier this year. But we also know that September, in many ways, is like the preseason now for both the Chiefs and the 49ers. I mean, look at the red zone performance of both of these teams early in the year. Was not good. And finally, in their most recent red zone possessions, the Chiefs on Monday night and the 49ers on Thursday night, finally, these teams started to figure it out. It seemed like some stuff started clicking. The cohesion is getting better. Again, a lot of similarities, both teams missing some key pieces offensively. The limited practices now in OTAs and training camp have turned September into a warm-up period in the NFL. Unfortunately, it's a warm-up period that counts. So the 49ers might be hurt down the road by their losses to the Rams and to the Arizona Cardinals, but it still is a warm-up period. And we don't really start to figure out who these teams actually are until October. So the 49ers are coming off a very promising week because they showed a lot of resilience and a lot of improvement from Sunday's disaster against the Cardinals to Thursday's win against the Seahawks, which I thought was truly impressive on the road. It was a gut check, and the 49ers passed it. The Chiefs, meanwhile, delivered their best game of the year against the New Orleans Saints on Monday night. So what a time for a matchup between these two teams. I like that it's relatively early in the season because if they face again in the Super Bowl, there'll be a nice enough gap in between the two to where we'll really be able to evaluate progress in between those two games. But right now, it seems that both the 49ers and the Chiefs enter on a collision course and on an upswing. And that should be very, very intriguing to watch come next Sunday. Manny asks, when will the 49ers get Charvarius Ward back? That's to be determined. Knee bruise. The knee's been bothering him, I think, for most of this season. Tested it out against Seattle, couldn't play. That's why Renardo Green's performance was so important. I thought all the 49ers corners did some good things. The guys that played. Rocky Yassin didn't play on defense, but he had a really big tackle on kick coverage on the kickoff after the Laviska Shenault touchdown. So you got to have depth. The 49ers have it. You want to keep on churning, even in instances where you're down several players. That's the sign of a good team and a good system that you could plug other guys in and you could keep the ball rolling. And the 49ers were definitely able to do that against the Seattle Seahawks. Yep, this is a good follow-up. The 49ers do need Ward 100% by mid-season or late season. I think they need him 100% at some point, and they would like him 100% for sure for a potential playoff run. What is so important though that they have this year that they didn't have in this abundance in previous seasons is defensive back depth. I mean, and this is something I've talked about a lot. This is the 49ers depth chart. I'm going to zoom in on the defensive backs. So we got Ward with the injury shade right here, but Yadam, Lenore, Renardo Green, who seems well ahead of his years, Darrell Luter Jr., who forced the fumble, by the way, on special teams on the kickoff return, kick coverage for the 49ers. That was before the long touchdown. And Rock Yassin, who had that nice tackle. All of these guys have contributed to the 49ers this year. This is the deepest cornerback room that they've ever had. And they needed it to beat the Seattle Seahawks, who have some weapons offensively after Charvarius Ward went down. Teams have been using spies against Brock Purdy. I think that last year, Steve Spagnuolo, he saw what happened in the NFC Championship game, and he did account some resources toward Brock Purdy using his legs. How do you combat the spy? Well, you got to throw your way out of it. If there's, especially if there's the spy that's fast enough to make sure the quarterback can't run. Sometimes teams spy a quarterback and he's still able to run, which ends up not being good. But if there's somebody dedicated to keeping an eye on Brock Purdy potentially running, they're not dedicated, at least fully, to defending the pass. So there should be a numbers advantage that an offense gleans on the back end because of it. So you have to take advantage of that with your arm, which is why Brock Purdy is such a dangerous and good player, because he can beat you with his arm and he can beat you with his legs. No, Floyd has not been bad at pressuring. What are you talking about? Floyd had 6 more pressures in the game on Thursday. He ranks in the top 10 amongst all defensive linemen this year in pressure rate. And if you want the graphic from the game against the Seahawks, this one right here tells you all you need to know. Look, there's Leonard Floyd's picture. Again, this is the average distance away from the quarterback over the course of the game. That's Leonard Floyd. He was on average closer to the QB than Nick Bosa, and Bosa had 14 pressures, 3.32 yards for Leonard Floyd. League average is 4.57 yards. So Leonard Floyd's got a high motor, a lot of speed. He had the pressure on Kyler Murray that I thought should have sealed the game against the Cardinals, but Murray made just a sensational throw to Marvin Harrison Jr. I see a lot of people starting to say stuff like this about Leonard Floyd, and it just isn't true. He and Bosa combined for 20 pressures. 14 were from Bosa. That's a monstrous game. That's a record game. Floyd had 6. That's a damn good game on the other side. Durable guy that has been everything that the 49ers thought he was going to be for them this year. And I think he's going to get back to his 10 sack mark. He's consistently been at 10 sacks for 4 straight years. I think you'll see a game with a cluster of sacks, at least 2 for Leonard Floyd at some point here. And he'll be right back on pace to get those 10. But the pressure numbers have been really good for Leonard Floyd. He's very consistent. And again, the 49ers run defense has been good. Like, don't let the outlier of the final drive against Arizona in 100-plus degree weather down on the field color your analysis of the 49ers run defense. 2.6 yards per carry given up to Seattle, 2.6 to Arizona before the very end there, where they were overexposed. Less than 3 yards per carry against New England, who has a heavy set run game. These guys have been good for 3 straight weeks. And Floyd, look at that. Mike asks a good question. Linebackers, the biggest defensive issue? Yes, and Kansas City exposed the linebacker position last year after Dre Greenlaw went out with the Achilles. They targeted Oren Burks 9 times, 9 catches into Oren Burks coverage last year. So the Chiefs are going to try to do that again. I know that somehow Seattle was able to get Devondre Campbell chasing DK Metcalf on the first 3rd down. Nick Sorensen made an adjustment to make sure that never happened again on Thursday night. Really important for the 49ers to make sure the matchups are right in this game against Kansas City. But the fact that the Chiefs are down a significant amount of weapons is something that we can't just sit here and ignore. Yes, they have Patrick Mahomes, but no, he hadn't been great this year. And this is not the weaponry that the Chiefs have had in the past when they've beaten the 49ers. So really important for San Francisco to make sure that it leverages what could be a talent advantage with its secondary against who Kansas City is running out there to attack its secondary. But I do think that Mike is right that linebacker 2, linebacker 3 spot is a concern for the 49ers. Geno Smith had a bad game. Pressure numbers are great because they forced Geno Smith into a bad game. You can't be serious. You can't be saying that 300 yards means a quarterback had a good game. I'll drop some knowledge on you here if you would like. You asked the question, Miguel, so I will go ahead and bring out the data. 49ers Seahawks. This is from Ben Baldwin's website. So you say that Geno Smith had a good game. The actual data disagrees. This is Brock Purdy's game, EPA per play, because raw yardage doesn't tell us the full story. Geno Smith dropped back 58 times to get his 300 yards. Brock Purdy dropped back only 33 times to generate way more, 36 points. So the expected points added per play, Purdy's right here. He was in the 88th percentile. So that's a great game. Geno Smith was in the 50th percentile. So what the 49ers did is they held Geno Smith to a mediocre game, despite the fact that they were missing key defensive pieces on all three levels of the football. QBR thinks Geno Smith was worse than mediocre. 50 is the mediocre score. He's at 47.3. 79 would be top of the league for Brock Purdy. So the 49ers had exponentially more efficient quarterback play than the Seahawks. So 300 yards is not going to tell you anything. See, Brandon says, if Mahomes throws for over 300, the 49ers will lose. 300 doesn't tell you anything. You could throw 300 with 250 of those yards being garbage yards, yards that don't help you win. So fantasy football has ruined the way that people analyze football. You got to look at the efficiency. This is the chart that's going to matter. The quarterback that wins on the EPA chart, and I'll show you guys this many times after the game to see how Purdy and Mahomes stack up. That's the QB that's going to most likely prevail in the football game. Last year, it was extremely evenly matched. This was the Super Bowl. Purdy was a little bit better than Mahomes last year. He was 68th percentile. Mahomes was 63rd percentile. But it was close enough to where there's, not a huge difference between the two. Mahomes got more plays, 58 versus 43. And I think that the reason the Chiefs were able to force overtime is because of the Christian McCaffrey fumble and the special teams muff, or, the ball that hit off of Darrell Luter Jr. Because even though Mahomes was less efficient, he got 15 more plays than Purdy. And he needed 15 more plays at lesser efficiency to force overtime in that football game. QBR, Purdy was a bit better than Mahomes. So the gap between Purdy and Mahomes has been relatively large this year. And it was noticeable in the Super Bowl last season. 49ers just didn't have the special teams performance that the Kansas City Chiefs had. I mean, it came down to that. It came down to the football that they could not get on that one punt. All right, guys, a couple more questions. The fantasy brain rot. Love it. Here we have concerns about how the 49ers fade in the second half versus the way the Chiefs can turn it up. Well, yeah, I think the 49ers managed to quell some of those doubts by the way that they held strong despite the momentum turning against them against the Seahawks. But it's going to be something that they have to prove over the course of this year. Who you are is starting to solidify now in October. So that was why, besides the standings, which were obviously important too, but that was why Thursday night was so critical for the 49ers. If you blow another game, if you don't stand tall in the second half when things start to go against you, that really starts to become part of your identity. In September, early October, not really going to be something that threatens your identity as much. But once the calendar starts flipping to mid-October into November, it's something you don't rid yourself of that season, right? So big win for the 49ers, but they still have more work to do. Why are the 49ers moving away from play action? Because the rushing efficiency hadn't been great, but it was really good. It was really good against Seattle. I do think that should open up some more play action opportunities for the 49ers moving forward, which could be really important against the Kansas City defense that has been awesome, at least a big time improvement, 28 to number 8 against the run. All right, 55 minutes of Saturday morning football analysis. Everybody subscribe to the channel. Obviously, go check out the San Francisco Standard. It's simple, sfstandard.com. My grades, 49ers against the Seahawks, are up on the description. If you're on Twitter, go to YouTube. If you're on the podcast, then go check out the YouTube and go take your browser to the description, click on the link, and you could see the 49ers grades against the Seahawks. This is a big-time matchup coming up against the Chiefs. I woke up early on this Saturday morning to bring you the first preview of the Measuring Stick Bowl. The 49ers favored in this one by 1 to 1.5 points. See how that moves this week, but this is going to be a hell of a intriguing battle that will show us a lot about both of these teams as they develop into who we think they're going to be toward the end of this 2024 season. Have a great Saturday. It's Fleet Week in San Francisco. Should be a good weekend. I'll be checking in with you throughout the weekend. This, though, should get us started for 49ers and Chiefs.